Good morning. My name is Len Losik. I'm President and Chief Technical Officer of a company called Failure Analysis, located in Santa Cruz, California. And I want to discuss with you the results of my research that I did for the Canadian Space Agency. The technology that my company works in is called Prognostics Health Management, or PHM. And for the first time, it allows behavior to be predicted with certainty rather than in probabilities. And we license the technology as well as provide engineering services. The only part of the mental illness, as I mentioned earlier, that might be genetic is if you're going to become mental illness as a result of your environment, whether you're going to get bipolar disorder or whether you're going to get schizophrenia is likely genetic based. But what's causing you to get the mental illness is what's going on by your caretakers or your parents, whatever lifestyle that you have as you're being raised or you're living in under pain or neglect is what's causing the mental illness. And so if one family has it and their siblings of the parents, they're likely probably going to be pretty poor parents too. And so you'll often see children of siblings also being developing either emotional or mental illnesses. And that's because of the parents who raised their parents probably provided an environment that was awful. And the parents had to develop survival skills, which again is often detaching themselves from their feelings and their emotions, eventually leading to serious emotional and or mental illness. And so this chart is meant to refute the belief that mental illness is genetic based. So we're going to discuss PHM technology and the fight or flight response. So as I mentioned before, we're primarily in the world of designing and building hardware and software. So how do we be able to predict what's happening inside of an astronaut that's training for going up into space? And so what we did was we chose to look at the rhythms of the body. There's four. Two of them are the circadian and ultradian rhythms. And our bodies work off the rhythms. Everything that our body does for us that we don't even know about is occurring is all done with rhythms. So what we did was said, we will look at this raw data coming from our rhythms and see if that will have premature aging present. So the four rhythms that deal with the body are the circadian rhythms. This is a 24-hour cycle under normal circumstances. These rhythms control your waking sleep cycle, body temperature, blood pressure, reaction time, level of alertness, hormone secretions, and your digestion. And there's two types of circadian lifestyles, right? Whether you're a morning person or an evening person. The diurnal rhythms, these are circadian rhythms that are in sync with the day and night cycle. Your ultradian rhythms are internal rhythms that repeat about 3 times a day, such as eating or going to the restroom. And then your infradian rhythms deal with the internal rhythms that have a period longer than 24 hours, like the female menstrual cycle, which is lunar-based, 28 days. As well as, similar to the ultradian cycle, the infradian rhythms are not directly linked to the circadian and the diurnal rhythms. These rhythms are not believed to be influenced by the daytime-nighttime schedule or changes that are available with natural light, but to other periodic behavior within nature, such as, again, the moon. So, using the circadian and ultradian rhythms, we decided to analyze those and see if we could have the data available that would help us find premature aging. So for astronauts in zero gravity, the brain is still working to circadian and ultradian rhythms from when they had gravity. It ages prematurely, and we can measure it using the predictive algorithms and by processing the bio data. So this is meant to be a picture of the brain, and here's the frontal lobes that are awful important to us daily. Okay, we primarily function off our conscious mind off the frontal lobes. This is a image a neural image that was done on for different research to show the impact of premature aging on the brain at different frequencies of light as time goes on. So you can see the difference here, premature aging, the difference between these two images of the same brain over time, and then the same brain later on. So it starts out looking like this and ends up looking like this for the mentally ill. And this is the different frequency of light, and this is a different perspective. But you can see the terrible changes in the brain as a result for the mentally ill person. So what we said was the data available for an astronaut's rhythms, we could use them to predict and prevent and even recover from mental illness during deep space missions. This is a picture of the waveform for life, where you have your sleep and wake activity can all be thought of, is dealt with mathematically in PHM technology. So this is a list of all the different kind of measurements that we asked for, and this is the follow-on list of even more measurements that we asked for from the Canadian Space Agency in order to be able to predict which astronauts were going to become mentally ill on a deep space mission. So the next charts we're going to cover how the PHM technology can be used to predict mental illness using the arrhythms. There's some charts that show the a normal short-term body temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate. The normal. These are what the normal looks like. So when a person is experiencing high stress, that's fight or flight response, premature aging, these normal are going to be heavily distorted. So we would be able to compare what normal is from any given person to that of the astronaut in training to see if they still match up. And if they don't match up, we know that there's, that the astronaut will acquire a mental illness. And here's some more type of data that we would look at, again, in order to predict which astronauts are going to acquire a mental illness on a deep space mission. This is the chart showing what happens to the circadian rhythm under cortisol effect with melatonin. Okay, this is what a normal over a 24-hour cycle. This is the output of melatonin over a 24-hour period. This is what that looks like for a person who is going to acquire mental illness over a 24-hour period. So you can see that for normal versus damaged, it's pretty easy to tell the difference. So the next charts are going to discuss how to prevent childhood autism, cancer, diabetes, mental illness, all autoimmune system diseases, and knowing how they're caused, or how to change from a lifestyle of drug treatment for your diseases to improving your lifestyle decisions that require taking the correct action as defined by your fight or flight response, and either prevent or recover from catastrophic disease, however you want to think of that. So, in AIDS research was the greatest thing that's happened probably in the 20th century. Cancer, the war on cancer has been in existence since the 1960s, spent billions and billions of dollars, and what we got out of that was, during cancer surgery, a reduction in the amount of mass that's taken for each surgery to remove cancerous tissue. And we also got chemotherapy, okay? Now, under AIDS research forced the researchers to go to the virus level. The world of the virus is extremely complex and amazing. And what was discovered was, in AIDS research, you know, with the AIDS virus not being controlled by our immune system, what they found out was they discovered that cancer was caused by virus. And so if under the AIDS research program, they did come up with some drugs to help control the virus, several viruses, and probably the greatest discovery was that virus causes cancer. Now, we discovered that virus causes cancer not from cancer research, but from AIDS research. Because in AIDS research, the researchers had to go down to the world of the virus, and that's when they found out how cancer was caused. Cancer is caused when a virus goes into a cell and accidentally triggers the growth switch on. And it's not like the virus wants to do that, but it accidentally does it. And so the more viruses you have in your body, the more likelihood that one of these viruses is going to trigger an on switch in one of your cell's DNA. Now, the body has cancer cells in it continuously, but on a onesie-twosie amount, and our immune system is able to kill those cells. Well, when your fight or flight response is suppressing your immune system, which allows the viruses to grow, that increases the likelihood that a virus is going to get into a cell and trigger that uncontrolled growth switch. And so by minimizing the amount of time that your fight or flight response is activated, it will decrease the likelihood of you acquiring a disease such as cancer. Also, with the research that when they were looking at DNA and how the virus triggers the growth switch in the DNA chain, they found that DNA has little caps at the end. And each cap is roughly got like 50 little segments. And what they found out was every time a cell dies, before it dies, it reproduces itself. Every time it reproduces itself in its DNA, the new cell has one less segment. So roughly speaking, every cell in our body can die and reproduce 50 times. After that, the cell goes away. And that's what we believe today to be the cause of aging. And what we know now is that with the presence of cortisol and adrenaline, the excessive presence, you've got cells under tremendous chemical attack to weaken it and die sooner. If a cell dies sooner, that's premature aging. So it will run through, that cell will run through its 50 little segments a whole lot quicker, and so it will die a whole lot sooner. And so that's how we believe premature, when I say we, I'm talking about me and PHM technology, believe that premature aging occurs in our body is through the excessive killing of cells and their need to reproduce up to 50 times. And so if we stop the overpresence of cortisol and adrenaline, we stop premature aging. So I want to explain how a fetus acquires autism, diabetes, or arthritis. So, the same in a fetus, almost all systems are working. Let me go to the next chart. This is a chart that shows the development cycle of an infant from weeks, And so all along here, almost all of the systems of the body are present and developing, getting more and more complex. Okay? So this is an ultrasound of a fetus. So we know from ultrasounds that the fetus responds to all stimulus at all times. And so if the fetus, although it may not be conscious, the fight or flight response is still working. And if that fetus's fight or flight response decides that it's too dangerous around it and its mother hasn't put it in a safe place soon enough, it will trigger the same chemical change in its brain that occurs to an adult by its fight or flight response that cause mental illness. In the case of a fetus, you don't have a developed brain. So when the fight or flight response changes the chemical imbalance in a developing brain, the electrical wiring, the synapses, do not develop properly over its period. And in this chart, if the fetus's fight or flight response decides at any stage in its development, if it occurs here, you're going to have a certain type of brain. If it occurs here, you're going to have a different type of autistic brain. The fetus can trigger the chemical imbalance in its brain anywhere along its development process. And that's how a fetus will develop autism after birth, as a result of the fetus's fight or flight response experiencing danger in a prolonged period. So, how to change, if you've got a disease, I want to talk about how to, well, let me back up and say, before I go on, I can't recall the chart's order. So, if the fetus's fight or flight response decides to cause a chemical imbalance in the brain, remember that the fight or flight response is also controlling the immune system of the child. If the fight or flight response hears the stimuli that triggers the fight or flight response to kick its immune system into high gear, that will cause an autoimmune system disease after the child is given birth. If the fight or flight response hears the stimuli that motivates it to suppress the immune system during its development, the born child will have an immune system disease. So during the fetus's gestation period, the fight or flight response on the fetus can cause childhood autism, a childhood arthritis, which is an autoimmune system disease, as well as diabetes, which is believed to be an autoimmune system disease. Diabetes is believed to occur when viruses attack the pancreas's insulin-producing cells. And those viruses were likely present because the immune system had been suppressed and allowed those viruses to grow. So you can come out, the baby can come, if the fight or flight response has suppressed the immune system, allowing the viruses to grow inside the fetus that kill the immune-producing cells, the infant will have diabetes. If the fight or flight response triggers the autoimmune system disease of arthritis, it will be because the fight or flight response decided to kick the fetus's immune system into high gear and causing an autoimmune system disease. So I've explained autism, childhood diabetes, and childhood arthritis. So now I want to talk about how to recover from the diseases, if possible. Now, for childhood autism, I cannot address the recovery for childhood autism, nor for childhood diabetes or adult diabetes for that matter. But I can address arthritis. Arthritis is an autoimmune system disease. So what you have to do is get your fight or flight response to tune down your immune system. And so for people that live what I call an unbalanced life, as determined by the fight or flight response, not your conscious mind, the fight or flight response, then triggered a chemical imbalance in the brain from ignoring the feelings and emotions where the fight or flight response wants you to take action. This is a diagram kind of trying to show how what an unbalanced life looks like, okay? Here you're living, here you got the gym, here you got work over here and all the stuff associated with that. Here you got friends, here you got, maybe you're seeing a counselor, here you got hobbies. You know, it's just sort of all over the place, okay? So, the fight or flight response allows the conscious great latitude in its life to come up with an unbalanced lifestyle, only to punish it later on with mental illness by creating that chemical imbalance in its life after the fight or flight response decides that its owner is living a chaotic life and a dangerous life, and it can't do anything to change it. To gain balance, people must learn to identify and remove the threats that, as defined by the fight or flight response, stress response, by improving the communications between the conscious and the fight or flight response or the subconscious. Okay? Again, this is a diagram of a unbalanced lifestyle that most of us live. So, stopping the progress or preventing ever getting the diseases and recovering from them. This is a diagram trying to illustrate what a balanced lifestyle looks like. You have equal amounts of things. You have everything covered in your life that's important. Creativity, hobbies, exercise, financial work, employment, relationships with families, spiritual life, social interactions. And those are pretty much all about the same amount. Okay? Unlike this unbalanced lifestyle, which would be considered chaotic. Although everything's in there, they're in there at different amounts. When you develop a balanced lifestyle, the fight or flight response responds accordingly and shuts down. It no longer perceives that you're living in a threatening environment when you have a balanced lifestyle, which includes having removed all of the threats as defined by the fight or flight response. So, by switching to living a balanced lifestyle from a reactive lifestyle, prevention and stopping the progress of disease from making minor and major lifestyle changes occurs. Unfortunately, if there's been a chemical change in the brain causing mental illness, premature aging is not reversible, and the mentally ill will continue to have a different form of reality than the rest of us once they get off of medication. Simply because their brain has been changed by that slight chemical imbalance. Pharmaceutical companies may one day develop drugs to suppress the fight or flight response. Right now, they're working on trying to control the immune system to get rid of autoimmune and immune system diseases, completely ignoring the fight or flight response that controls the immune and the autoimmune diseases, okay? So, the pharmaceutical companies have to realize that what's in control of the immune system, right now, they do not believe anything controls it, that it is a completely autonomous system within our body. So, in thinking about recovering from brain damage caused from the fight or flight response, these are some examples of some pictures, some diagrams, some images of brains. Now, increasing brain size has been reported in a scientific papers by using meditation program for many years. This is a picture showing the brain damage that occurs on different scans. And this is meant to show the improvement in the size of the brain. with medication. So I have indicated where this paper, the name of this paper is, and how to find it, and who the authors are. It's called Brain Changes in Long-Term Zen Meditations Using Proton Magnetic Resonance Spectroscopy and Diffusion, Tensor Imaging, a Controlled Study. Okay, these images come from that controlled study showing that they did get measurable improvement in brain size using meditation. So when we published our results to NASA that said that living under 0G and working in space caused mental illness, and that if they were going to plan on going to Mars, they needed to look at providing artificial gravity, they immediately hired 6 new female astronauts because of the one female astronaut that I covered earlier, Miss Captain Lisa Nowak. She was a female astronaut that became mentally ill. And assigned 12 male astronauts into the program to do a long-term study of the effects of space on the body. And the first person they picked was a twin of 2 astronauts. And they were going to compare him, after he'd been up in space for a year, with his brother who was going to remain here on Earth. Well, what happened was the brother that went up in space became so ill, so much damage. After 10 months, they had to bring him back to the Earth. And he was so bad off, he had to retire out of the astronaut program. He is now retired, and he is now going through a recovery process of all of the damage that existed to him and his body. And because these are medical-related information, NASA cannot release that information concerning the medical issues to the public because of HIPAA rules. Hospital, I can't remember, portability rules that says that people's medical information is to be kept secret. NASA does not have to divulge the damage that was done to this astronaut. But as a consequence of that 12-month study, they terminated that study, and they've stopped talking about sending people to Mars, okay? Because of the damage that was done to that one person, that one astronaut that they sent up into space. And they are talking about sending robotic missions to Mars rather than people. So in summary, hopefully I said these things. The actions by a fetus or a person's fight or flight response causes cancer by allowing the growth of viruses that get into the cells that trigger the uncontrolled growth switch, mental illness that is triggered by the fight or flight response by a chemical change, and if the chemical change while the fetus is in a womb, it causes autism. If the viruses that kill the cells that produce insulin in the pancreas are attacked by the viruses that are there because of the immune system being suppressed by the fight or flight response. In arthritis, if the fight or flight response causes the immune system to drive into high, causing arthritis. All immune and autoimmune system diseases can be recovered from by learning to turn off the fight or flight response. I'm not covering any genetic-based diseases. Hopefully you realize that. So mental illness occurred on NASA's manned space missions, and more severe mental illnesses are likely to occur if NASA and private companies decide to go into deep space missions and back to the moon. So using PHM technology and the data from our rhythms allows people to be able to predict, prevent, and recover from mental illness from space missions. The subconscious uses mental illness as a message to the conscious mind, wanting it to make better decisions and take action and to become safe as the fight or flight response decides it's safe. If the needs of the fight or flight response are not met either by an adult or the fetus, it will cause permanent brain damage, resulting in fetuses in autism, and in adults bipolar disorder and schizophrenia in either children or adults. Mental illness is caused by the fight or flight response as brain damage from premature aging due to overexposure to cortisol and adrenaline, and the fight or flight response's determination that it's powerless and out of control over the conscious mind and the conscious mind's ability to remove threats that the fight or flight response identifies. The progression of the fight or flight response caused diseases can be stopped by meeting the needs of the fight or flight response or the subconscious. And the need for medication in the future can be reduced or eliminated by learning to identify and remove the threats the fight or flight response decides is present, and change to a continuous balanced lifestyle. Conclusions. Our fight or flight response controls our longevity and is outside the sphere of our awareness. Our fight or flight response is always in control of us. The fight or flight response allows the conscious mind to make only minor decisions related to our safety. And so we believe that our conscious mind is in control of our life. When we assume that our fight or flight response is working rationally, we call it our subconscious. The body's health is controlled in minor ways by the conscious, and diseases and death occur from the fight or flight response. Ignoring the needs of the fight or flight response for the conscious mind's needs will cause severe diseases and premature death. After age 50, without changing to living a safe lifestyle as determined by the fight or flight response, premature death will occur. Living a safe and low-stress lifestyle after age 50 will increase your lifespan. Okay. Now, what I have is a list of books that we've published that includes PHM technology. The ones that related to diseases are only a small part of the books that we have available related to PHM technology and the space industry and GPS and different applications. And these are a list of published papers that we've done over the many years since 2006. These are all available from our website at failureanalysis.com. Okay? And these are all published papers dating back. Our first paper was published in 1995 while I was at Lockheed Martin on research that I had done at UC Berkeley. And so that concludes my presentation on the causes of childhood autism, arthritis, diabetes, and mental illness, as well as those same diseases, with the exception of autism, for adults and children. Thank you very much.